On today's episode of Locked On Mets, I'm joined by longtime Mets PR man Jay Horwitz to tell some stories of his time working for the team and also tell us about his own podcast, Amazing Conversations.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment matter more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Now on the show, joined today by Jay Horwitz. We're going to discuss a lot about Mets history, about his changing job going from working in PR to with the alumni department, and as well as his new show, Amazing Conversations. So without further ado, here is my amazing conversation with Jay Horwitz. Very excited to welcome on this guest to Locked On Mets, Jay Horwitz, longtime PR guy for the Mets. If you are a Mets fan like me, you know who Jay Horwitz is. He has stories for days, and he's telling them now on his own podcast, Amazing Conversations. His latest one I just watched this morning with Doc Gooden. A great show. You can find that on the New York Mets YouTube channel. You can also find it wherever you get podcasts. I want to start there, Jay. What's it been like to become a podcaster like me? What's it like to have these conversations?
It's different. And we, originally it was called Amazing and Mets Alumni Conversations, something like that. We wanted to change it a little because I wanted to branch out and do some other things. We had a good conversation with Doc. I go back to Doc for almost 40 years, and like I was able to do Sarah Lang's.
Yeah.
We did the people who produced the Willie Mays documentary. So I wanted to, Vito, who helps me with the podcast, suggested changing the name, which was great. This way, it doesn't have to be strict alumni. It'd be, people like we did. I did Phil Simms a couple of weeks ago. It's just to try and right. And I like to have people have something in common with. I don't do it by notes. I, did stories like yesterday. I did something with Davey Johnson. It'll be down the road. It was just reminiscing about the first time we met and with stuff that happened in the '86 World Series. So I worked with, when I switched jobs in 2019 and to take over the alumni, I worked with all these guys. I've been here. It's my 43rd year with the Mets. So, I started April 1st, 1980. So I really worked with most everybody I've spoken to. It's been great and really enjoy it.
That's amazing. And I think that personally, as a Mets fan, it's really great that even though, there's been some change in ownership and coaches and players, like there is still that consistency that's been there with a lot of the people that are in the organization. I know I wanted to ask you a little bit about Keith getting his new deal with SNY.
Yeah.
To see them as a booth get to pass, Kiner, Nelson, and Murphy. Personally, I'm 27, so they've been together 18 years now. My entire childhood has been colored by, those guys in the booth on the TV side and Howie on the radio. So it's great to see them stick around. It's great to see that continuity that does exist in the Mets organization.
Yeah, with TV, each of the guys bring a different thing. Gary's kind of like the quarterback in the club. Ronnie does the pitching. Keith does, he'll admit he's sometimes a comical relief, which he plays the part, but he's a baseball aficionado. And, what makes it great is that Ronnie and Keith were teammates. So they were together on the '86 team, and Gary, came on in 1987. So they've known each other for a long time. They're friends. That's what I love about my job, Ryan. I'm there with people who are friends, and you can go to them and stuff that you need them for. And I'm glad the Boo stayed together because they were a good mix together. And Howie Rose is one of my favorite people. He's one of my biggest backers. When I switched over to do the alumni stuff, Howie was, hey, it'll be fine. You'll add something. I was a little unsure when I switched jobs in 19, but Howie, as a great as does Gary and all the guys, appreciate for the alumni. And Gary, Howie really pushed me to do, and he's really been supportive of everything I've done.
That's amazing. I think it has been really. I'm not sure how much it's been, what you've done or just in general with the organization under Cohen, but it seems like the last couple of years we really have seen an embrace in Mets history in a way that, as a fan, it's been amazing. I was there for Keith Hernandez getting the jersey retired. Kuzman, the statue of Seaver. We're seeing now Gary Cohen and how he get into the Mets Hall of Fame. So, how has it been like from your end to just see that embrace of Mets history by the
It
fans and
is
by the
great.
organization?
When the first thing that Steve said when he came on board was, "I want to do an alumni game, an old timers day game," and we couldn't do it because of COVID, and we did it last year, and he let us run with it. We did it a first class thing. We gave each of the guys a ring for coming back, a couple of nights in a hotel, goodie bags, meals, plane fare for their families, and I think it was a perfect scenario. I mean, you had 68 guys come back. The weather was great. The team was playing great at the time. We hadn't done it in 28 years. We capped off the ceremony by retiring Willie Mays' number, which was my favorite player growing up. So everything worked out great. We couldn't be any better. I mean, it's good to get support from ownership.
Absolutely. Is the Old Timers Day gonna stay? Is there another one this year, or
Well,
is it?
this is what the thing is. I've got a lot of calls. It's hard to recreate the buzz we did. I'm hoping, to bring guys back and doing before COVID, we brought a guy or two back. We have the ambassador program. We have, Mike Piazza, Todd Zia, Mookie, and Tim Tuffle. They commit for homestand, post pictures. We hope to have a presence with that. And, on June 3rd, and Leiter and Hojo and Gary and Howie going into the what do you call it, to the Mets Hall of Fame. It's not going to be as spectacular as we did last year. I think it's hard to do that so soon. That's
Yeah,
hopefully in the near future we can do it again though. It was
that would be
great there.
amazing. It was a lot of fun to watch for sure. We will have more of my conversation with Jay Horwitz in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the midway point in the NBA season. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to 3 points drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Personally, I have my eyes already on MLB futures, and the one I will tell you have to bet on is Kodai Senga to win Rookie of the Year at plus 750. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment matter more by visiting FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. I wanted to go back a little bit to your time, working in PR and the beginning. I know you told a great story. I was wondering if you could tell it here as well about spilling some orange juice on Frank Cashin
Yeah,
to
that was
get your
my.
start.
I had accepted. This is in winter of 1980. I
Yeah.
had accepted a job to be a stat guy with Tony Kubek and Joe Garagio on NBC. And a couple of days, probably a month after I accepted, no, a couple of weeks later, I got a call. It said, "This is Jim McGurry from the Mets. We have a new ownership coming in. We'd like to talk to you about the PR job." I thought it was a friend of mine named Harold Levine. I hung up on the guy. Later in the day, I found out it was a legitimate call. So I said, "Listen," I called the guy back and I apologized. I said, "Jim, can I come down? Can I still interview?" He flew me down to St. Petersburg. People who know me, I have a lousy sense of direction. So I went to the wrong hotel. I was late. I was supposed to go to the Hilton. I went to the Edgewater. Took a cab across town, and then when I got to the Edgewater, to the Hilton Hotel, Frank Cashin was sitting in a breakfast room in his little white tennis shorts. I reached over, knocked over the humongous container of orange juice in his lap. He asked me one or two questions. I mumbled my way through that. And on the way to the airport, I remember calling my late mom. I said, "Mom, there's no way I got this effing job." And 43 years later, I'm still here. So it's what it is.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And to go from that and just a short time later, the Mets are world champions in '86. What was it like kind of seeing that team really develop with a lot of homegrown guys and just, being involved with the players for all those years to see that
Yeah,
culmination?
and I'm probably closer to the '86 team, and not because we won, but because I was just out of college, and the guys embraced me, like guys like Keith and Mookie and Doc and Straw became friends, and we went through a lot that year. Had a little on and off the field some troubles, drew us all closer, and the way we won games, we had Mike Tyson come and visit us that year because he liked the way we played. Ray Knight knocked out Eric Davis at third base in one game. We had fights. We had off the field stuff. I mean, I'll never forget. Everybody talks about game 6 of the World Series, but in Houston, we had to fight 16 innings to get to the World Series, and we come back from 5-3, 2 outs, 2 strikes in the bottom of 10th to win the game. There's a lot of great memories, and I can't believe it was 37 years since we won the series, and it's a lot of great memories. What made that team closer? I was closer in age. I wasn't, an old guy like I am now, and the guys embraced me and they took me under their wing and it made me feel part of the team.
And I think you can see that closeness in your conversation with Doc. So again, I encourage everyone to check out that conversation you just had with him. Yeah, it was really a good stuff. Again, you can find on the Mets YouTube wherever you get podcasts. Amazing Conversations. Personally, I was born in '95, so my first, I kind of grew up on Mike Piazza, and then David Wright, Jose Reyes, Beltran. That was really the team where I became kind of an educated Mets fan. The 2006 team. Would you have any memories of how that team kind of came together and those personalities, David Wright, and I guess before that Cliff Floyd, but then the Beltran Delgado years?
That was, Omar Minaya deserves a lot of credit. When he came on board, he wanted to, at that point, I think Omar's first, he was 05, or I forget, 05, 04. It's like recruiting your first All-American. So he got, I'm probably going to get the year screwed up. He recruits Pedro to come here from Boston. Then we signed Beltran. We trade for Delgado, and we pieced in with guys like Julio Franco, Paul LaDuca, and David came up. I mean, it's unfortunate, that year, and I'm a big Carlos Beltran supporter. He's probably a lot of Mets fans like yourself might remember him for Game 7 against Wainwright, bases loaded, third strike, we lose. But if you look at his career, probably the best 7 years any position player ever had. And that fortunate, that's the one memory. David Wright, I always say is as good a player he's 100 times better person. He started a foundation when he was a young kid, never turned away an autograph, always had time for the, for the fans. And unfortunately, he just turned 40 now. He should be still playing now, except for his injuries. And, no offense to Scott Rowland, who got into the Hall of Fame. David Wright could have been Scott Rowland, and some people think he might have been better than Scott Rowland. He was on the track to Cooperstown, but, David's well-adjusted now. He's got 3 young kids. He lives out in California with his wife, Molly. But we had that talented group. We came close. I think we lost twice on the last day of the season to the Marlins. And, we just, in the 06 thing, I think the one regret I have from that year is that Willie Randolph never got another job. If you look at his record, he's got a winning percentage of .536. How different would it have been if Beltran would have got a single to right field and we would have won the game, but it didn't happen. But no, it was great. I've been fortunate enough, Ryan, in my years here. I never really had an argument with a player. My whole philosophy was to treat the 25th guy like the number 1 guy, to take care of not just the all-star guys, and have a trust with the players. Like when a PR guy loses the trust in the locker room, he's a dead man. So I never wanted to portray myself as a suit. I wanted to be one of the guys. I never was afraid to laugh at myself, to be the butt of practical jokes, and it got me through 38 years of being a PR guy with the Mets in a pretty big market.
It's an amazing resume, and it's amazing memories for a lot of us. And I'm actually curious, since you mentioned treating the 25th guy like the first guy, who are some of kind of the great 25th guys that you develop relationships with that maybe we don't necessarily remember much, but actually had big personalities that we didn't always get to see?
Vance Wilson,
okay,
catcher. Joe McEwing, going back to '86, Danny Heap, an outfielder. and I'm going to select some guys. Uh, Catcher Ramon Castro. I'll tell you a funny story about him. When Cliff Floyd was here, I have a big head. I have a size 8 3/4 head, and Ramon Castro has a big head. So one day, Cliff Floyd decided to me and Ramon to go into the training room, and he would measure the heads. And my head weighed 13.8 pounds, and his weighed 13.4 pounds. So those are one of my fine memories. But those just a few. I'm sure I'm gonna, slight guys, guys that back in the bullpen, guys like Doug Siska pitcher in the '86 team. Um, a guy like Sid Fernandez who's overlooked with the Gooden and Darling pitching staff. So those are just just trying relationship to. That's what I was really proud of the Old Timers League game. We got 68 guys coming here. Very few said no. They couldn't come because of injury, or illness. But I was really proud that when I called, they picked up the phone. They came another guy, Butch Husky, as a guy Memphis remember. He, a guy like Rico Bronia, not an all-star, but an all-star guy. Those are some of the guys who I've remained friends with through the years.
Absolutely. It is interesting when I watch the game, like some of the names that I think people would not realize they'll get the cheer. Like Benny Agbayani will
Right.
always get the biggest cheer among Mets fans, even though
You know
obviously
why? You know why? Because in the game against the Giants in May 2000, he caught a ball in left field. He thought it was the third out of the inning. Threw the ball to a kid in the stand. When he realized it wasn't third, he got the ball back, and the next half inning, he found the same kid and gave him a ball. So that's
amazing.
Benny Agbayani.
That's great. The great moments of Mets history that we don't always get to see. So I'm glad to
Right.
hear you shine light on some of them on your new show, Amazing Conversations. Who do you have coming up here? You got some more big guests lined up over the
Yes,
coming weeks?
I'm going to go down to spring training. The guys I want to do down here, I'm going to do something with Buck. Not talk about baseball, talk about personal stuff. Big Alabama football fan. I'm going to do something with David Wright's going to be down there for a couple of days. I want to do something with two of the coaches, Jeremy Hefner, who was a player when I was here, and Dom Cheat. You know what Dom Cheaty's claim to fame is?
No.
His father, Harry Cheater, in 1962, was traded for himself. He was a Met catcher. He was traded to Cleveland. Cleveland sent it back to the Mets. He's like one of the 2 or 3 guys in baseball history who was actually traded for himself as a player to be named later. I'm hoping to do something with Howie Rose and maybe 1 or 2 other guys. And we have, Bill Pulsifer, former #1 pick. And Bill is, Bill was taken by depression at the end of his career, and he's one of the advocates of speaking about that. And we have, I'm going to be the PR guy for Team Israel in the WBC.
Okay.
And I interviewed Ian Kinsler, the manager of Team Israel, and Ty Kelly, who played for the Mets and on Team Israel. So just trying to mix it up a little bit, some different personalities involved in there.
Well, that's going to be amazing. All you guys can check that again. Amazing Conversations. The episodes drop on YouTube, New York Mets channel, and wherever you get your podcast. Jay, thank you so much for
My
spending a little
pleasure.
time with me today.
Good luck, and I'll see you around City Field next year.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It'd be great to see you in person.
That's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jay Horwitz. On tomorrow's show, we're going to begin our Setting Expectations series where I go through the projections for players on the Mets and then give my own take on what I expect from this player. And since it's a Friday Farm Report, we are going to focus in on Francisco Alvarez, who I think could be maybe the biggest X factor in all of baseball. So we'll see what all the projection models have for him, what else he has to do to become the starting catcher of the Mets, and where I think he'll ultimately go. We'll probably also, in that same episode, look into the other catchers that the Mets have that will be manning the position in his absence to start the season. So make sure you follow, rate, and review where you get your podcast. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for a second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to learn about everything going on in Major League Baseball. You'll follow Locked On MLB on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts.